facing on the east side of it too. So
Yeah.
the one on the west side, but it's both.
And there's something all that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're just across the field, way that too.
Yeah. Weird how that.
If Sharon said hers was like that,
Must be Jason's, because he was over. Mine came at 3. But his still was a mile.
I asked her about that.
When I came home this afternoon, taking Dad, they were working on it, fall in line here. But when it just came out, I knew they'd still all be down there for no reason.
I saw a whole kicking man in the truck.
Yeah,
go
there were
by.
about 5 or 6 of them.
I'd like to call to order the Milan Township Planning Commission meeting for June 14th, 2022. It is 7:01. What sort of business? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Everybody's here. What the plan? Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I sent everybody the draft meeting minutes for the May 24th meeting. Last week, as well as, and are there any additions or corrections? No.
So on the meeting minutes, and so these, are these the, these aren't the most recent ones, are they?
That's the May 24th meeting minutes.
So the one thing I guess that it would be helpful to put in here and is our list of like our to-do list for the planner, just so we're kind of tracking what they're doing and I don't mean that in a negative way, just more.
Right, no, it'd be
I
nice
went to
know.
go do stuff and then I was like, oh, I think we told the planner was gonna do it or something like that. So I just, for not overlap and also for accountability.
As well as for the members of the planning commission too, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So, but otherwise,
that's like for the next one, I can add that. No problem at all. As I go through the order of this and
so you, I mean, you said it here a little bit, it was requested that.
but it'd be nice to have it spelled out more percent. He's got to read the whole thing and capture that, you know. So, okay, yes, so any other suggestions or additional questions? Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 24th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 24th.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay. Correspondence. Okay, received quite a bit of correspondence. And all related to the solar project. The, the first one is a letter from a Milan Township resident. Unfortunately, he did not sign it. Said I'm a Milan Township resident, have been for 15 years. Relocated to this area due to his employment and previously lived in the farming community in southern Ohio. many family members who are still farming in Ohio today. I made the decision to send this letter after watching the last planning commission meeting via Zoom. I feel the need to express to you how terrible I feel with the situation regarding the solar farms is being handled. It is clear to me that there are 3 primary residents which are opposing solar, and these residents have succeeded in convincing the members of the planning commission that they are not educated enough to make decisions on the proper ordinance for solar or renewable energy for Milan Township. I do not agree. I have reviewed the current ordinance and see that this was done with full intent to protecting the township, which it will do. 2 of the naysayers came knocking on my door a few months back, requesting me to sign a petition against solar. I was told that this solar farm would do the following: 1, my basement would be flooded due to drain tile and the fields being damaged. 2, my lawn and garden would burn due to the heat radiating from the panels. 3, my property value would greatly decrease due to the eyesore of the panels. I thank them for stopping by, explaining that I would need time to review and research this myself. After visiting, I have taken the time to research solar and believe that this will not cause any of the terrible things these 2 individuals were telling me, and in fact have learned about benefits of having solar farms in Milan Township will do. First and foremost, the community will greatly benefit from the tax revenue generated. Having additional funds can lead to many community-wide benefits: a local ambulance service dedicated to our area, improved roads and bridges, the township park with paved walkways, which will reach out to all residents, young and old. These are a few suggestions I would like to express. Having close family involvement in farming, I understand what a difficult business making a living as a farmer is. I hope that some point in the future they will have the opportunity to diversify their income by leasing for solar or wind. And when that day comes, that the community they reside in will support them and not cause the situation my own is in today. Thank you very much. Then I received some suggestions from a person. Ordinance needs to say that property value will be guaranteed for those within 2 miles of the project. And the 2 project will limit solar panels to 20% of a parcel. By the way, these I will be scanning what I just read, and they will be put on the website. As anything that is given to me, suggestions from everybody, I scanned it and they're on the website. Let's see. And then from other residents. Yeah, and this one is on the website already. I received it early June. Basically, some suggestions. I'll just quickly summarize this because it's just a bunch of suggestions, and like I said, all listed. It's already on the website. Setbacks, no more than 100 feet from any building or house. Screening, staggering, fast-growing pine trees. 7-foot fencing. PA 116. She believes that this should not be a factor at all, and then she has a discussion about that. Location of solar farm, I believe that putting it all into industrial would be a mistake. Yes, some, but not all. Solar farms do not need access to water hookup. Limitation and location of solar farms in township. I am in favor of no more than 10% of the farmland in Milan Township to have any form of renewable energy. Public comment. I believe public comment has controlled and delayed productivity at several meetings. It should be strictly limited. So, structured meetings and goals, because I feel that there has been little or no movement forward to amend the ordinance, and probably because of the pressure to open a master plan. I would recommend that the wording be to add renewable energy into a master plan be decided on and set to the board for final approval wording. Landowner investment, we would like to keep our property in the family for future generations. My family has owned property since 1899. Contrary to some rumors, our family cares and has cared deeply with our land in this township. As we know, farming is unpredictable, especially when it comes to what Mother Nature does. So moratorium, it was approved to have 6 months moratorium. If there are goals to complete, needed steps to get the final amendment recommendations. I feel a month-to-month moratorium extensions, all that may be needed. Meeting prep. Appears that members are not able to be as prepared for the meetings as they could be, and the necessary paperwork ahead of the meeting seems to be an issue. I'll try to do better than that. Opposers of solar farms. While there are always those who are not in favor of such projects, I encourage that we do not fill the house with those that are opposed. I have talked with more residents that are not bothered either way, or are feeling it is the right thing to do to have a project such as solar farm and additional program. So this is on, like I said, this is already on the web, and so you can see it. And the other two will be posted as well. Okay, Bob, anything from the township board?
Excuse me, the only important thing is that township board extended the moratorium by 6 more months.
So it's until December?
No, I think until January, because
Okay,
the current moratorium doesn't expire till the end of this month.
okay. Great. Very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, public comment time, 2 minutes per person. I see somebody gave me some instructions on public comment participation, which I have not had time to read, so I'll ignore. Okay,
Who wants to talk?
okay. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Yes, last meeting, you guys, at the end of the meeting, we were, asked John Emos, your planner there, if found consolidation was on that, why is that on there, on the draft? That was put in 3-4 months ago. You pick and choose what you want to put in there?
No, I don't, and I will take a look at the documents, and since you've just brought it up, I can always add it.
I put it in there on paper, I sent it.
Okay, I will add it. I'm sorry if I overlooked it.
I just would like you to point out on the map to me where the proposed park was supposed to be on the map, what area? Is it 65 acres or 60 acres?
Right here?
And then where's the industrial and
Down here?
Industrial, the red is commercial.
Well, obviously,
C1 is-
commercial's the red, there's a little bit up there by where the bank is.
so there's not been any consideration of putting solar on the proposed park area?
Well,
I mean, it seems like the township would want to generate revenue for themselves if they want it.
we did not buy that property to develop it. We bought it for future use and for a park.
What's future use? What development?
Bob,
What's future?
isn't it, the township can't make money on that, though, I thought. Because even with the farm rate, it goes in
what
the
it's-
state.
What it was any money that the township generates on that property must be only used on the property.
On the property, that would be, because that's why.
And also, if we're dumb enough to ever sell it, we do not get the purchase price.
So why don't you lease it then?
We do, we lease it to a farmer.
All right, so why couldn't you lease it to a solar for future?
Because that's a 30-year commitment.
We're not developers. I mean, as far as I know, the township has.
Well, wait, wait.
Do you have a point of order
Yeah.
about
No,
how
wait,
we're
wait.
discussing
We're getting
public
to-
comment?
We're getting to what I feel is important. What I suggest you do is bring it up at the township board meeting and have the board members discuss it.
I just want to know what.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So, a long time ago, when we first got it, there was a proposal to put that baseball park there. Unfortunately, that project fell.
Well, I did a little bit of research and this came up about the Milan Township turning down solar. And their township is about the size as ours. I don't know about, resident wise, but square miles. I just want to pass it out and see if you give it a look, maybe during your answer. It's pretty interesting because I think that we went right through there. Oops, sorry, I might see something that went right by there when we went up to the pier. It didn't seem like they went through as much as what we're going through to make a decision. I don't know.
Thank you. I will read this and put it on the web. As we feel. And if there's interesting information that applies that we can use, I will glean that whatever information or logic from there.
I thought John was gonna be at these.
I expected him to, so I'll find out why he can show.
I think he said this meeting he was gonna send his.
I'll find out why she can show up. So, okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Kevin.
I just want to clarify, on the website, it's, because she was having troubles deciding where to put it or whatever, and she put it under master plan, the drop down.
What are we talking
So if
about?
the proposals and stuff,
For the comment? Oh, the citizen
not the
comments?
comments, the sample like that you're working on, for them, with your comments, the ordinance and then the suggestions and then your.
Right.
That stuff is under, what did I just say, master plan. And then the comment ones are under citizen comments or something
Right,
like
yeah,
that, under
citizen
planning
comments,
commission. Right.
Yes, under
So
plan.
but if you're looking for the meeting, like before the meeting, the stuff that's from the planner or from what you're
Meeting
doing,
documents.
that stuff is under master plan. I think it's solar ordinance, then it's there.
I'm going to talk to you about how we can maybe make it a little more obvious.
Well, she wasn't sure and that's where she put it, but right, it could get changed, but just so you know, that's where, because I had to go look and.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Later?
Planners, but he's not here.
You can always ask me and I'll pass it on.
Okay, well, what I was wondering is, what would happen if the survey of the master plan, because when we open up the master plan, do we have to do the survey?
No,
So we don't have to get the residents' ideas or okays or anything like that?
that's why we have meetings. That's why we have a public meeting. That's why we publish it. That's why we send it out to other townships for them to comment.
Okay, so
But no, we do not have to have a survey.
you don't have, so you're just taking it for what it's worth, okay? So if, okay, well, that's answered my question. But can we rescind this ordinance?
Can we do what?
Rescind it?
You send it?
Yeah, let's just say that we opened up the master plan and there was a survey. Then, is there any way that we could, let's just say we had the survey and the survey failed, or the residents, don't want solar in the master plan, then would we have to start all over with the new ordinance, or does that original ordinance that we are trying to amend, would that go into effect?
It is, the ordinance, solar ordinance is in effect currently. That is what.
That original one.
The original one that we
passed
had is
in
on the
2
books and is, we didn't have a moratorium. That's the one that would guide whoever wanted to make an application. The,
But there is a way to reset
if, for example, you're alluding to the fact that maybe if it was determined that the majority of the people did not want solar, that would have no effect on whether we had a solar ordinance or not. The reason why we have a solar ordinance, or any ordinance, is to protect the township regarding uses of the land use in Milan Township and how people conduct themselves under various land uses. Having a solar ordinance does not say that we have to approve a solar farm or solar projects or whatever. What it does, if we did not, if let's say we rescinded it and said, took it off the books, we would be wide open.
No, but
We would, no, wait a minute, we would be, if we took it off the books, we would be wide open, no matter what the people wanted. Could be 100% of the people say, no, we don't want it. We'd be wide open for a developer to come in and say, we're setting up shop, and you know, if you don't like it, we'll see you in court.
But isn't that what happened here almost?
No.
Okay.
Because what happened here is that, yes, the developer came in, they said, we're coming in. We set up an ordinance to protect the township.
Who did?
We did. The township.
Okay.
The planning commission and the township board set up an ordinance to protect the township. So that the developer can't just come in here and do whatever he wants. Because without an ordinance, for example, we don't have a wind ordinance.
Yeah, why don't we do that too? One more.
Well, we will eventually, but one thing at a time. We only have only so many hours in a day. It's anyway, so we don't have the wind ordinance. Now, a wind developer can call up and say, hey, we're coming on in. And there's nothing you can do about it, because we can't stop them. State law says that we cannot exclude their use. And now, because we have a solar ordinance, our township board, even if the majority of the people want solar, the township board could say, no, we don't want it. Because we have a solar ordinance. The solar ordinance says that as part of the approval process, they have to, get a special use approval from the township board. Now, the township board, for whatever reason they could say, no, we don't want to. No matter even 100% of people want to, we don't want to. Well, obviously, then a lot of people would want them. So by having the ordinance protects you and protects the township. Well, yes, and it is reasonably strong. The ordinance we have could be, could have additional things in it. I don't disagree with you. But but those, it has the minimums requirements for a solar project. So, okay, any other additional questions or comments? Okay. For our agenda, we want to discuss the master plan vision for renewable energy. On the back of the agenda, on the second page, is the proposed master plan draft addendum. And basically, the same thing as we had last meeting.
I have extra if you're interested.
Now, I was hoping to receive some input from people, but unfortunately I never did. So I also handed out to you guys chapters 4 and 5 of the master plan, so that you could have a sort of like a reference about where these paragraphs are would be placed. Yes, Rebecca.
So I guess I started to make some recommendations, but it was really dependent on planner providing, samples from other municipalities. I found in our courses, but theirs is completely
This one?
different
No.
and not, definitely does not,
I just keep looking at extra copy.
you know, so it doesn't really fall in line, so I guess I think we can discuss this. But at the same time, I mean, we pay a planner to provide us with what I would say are expertise and information, and I feel a little ill-equipped for going into all of this stuff. So, I mean, I would maybe make the recommendation to, I don't know, my thoughts to move into the ordinance.
Okay.
But. Because I don't even know, so just to quickly start talking about this, utilizing clean energy sources of power, generating affordable and sustainable power. The township isn't generating power, the individual farms are, so I guess. I'm really getting into like the semantics of all of it, where it's probably too granular, because of the fact that I just have nothing else to compare it to. And I tried finding some others, just, I don't know, it's sort of depending on the planner. And then the other thing, so I'm not, again, just for clarity purposes. Mainly it's because it looks different than the original here, so. This was, we were gonna start our own alternative energy goal.
Correct.
Goal and objective, and then these were gonna be the strategies. And then we would have another goal of renewable energy facilities.
That would be under future,
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
next chapter, which is the land use.
I don't, those are just my thoughts. Others are more clear.
Yes.
On this alternative energy goal, it's labeled as pages 58 to 59. I notice that falls right between chapters 4 and 5.
Right, chapter 4.
Okay, so it'll be at the back of chapter 4.
Right, and the reason for that is because that's the place to put it. And as well as, and I gave you chapter 4 because it's in order to compare, to see what other goals we have and how they were structured.
And the other big thing that I was hoping to get from other townships or other municipalities is, I think to some of the public's interest is what are so if the township were to create some vision, is it an do we indicate in the master plan that we wanted an industrial, we wanted a farm, we wanted it or ag one, like, and then do we set kind of total amounts within the master plan? I understand that to John's Ennis's point is that the master plan is not legal, it's not legally binding.
And yes,
But
the answer to your question is yes. In the master plan, we can say that there are areas of the township that we would recommend that solar could be placed. And then we would list the criteria for those places. And generally, those are criteria, physical criteria, or because of the roads or access to electrical infrastructure or whatever. And away from housing, residential district and so forth. So yes, in the master plan, we can say, okay, we only want 20% of the township to have will be the maximum amount of land used for solar or renewable energy.
I can't, are they online? Kevin, do we know if the planner is online?
No, he is not.
So yes, that is part of the chapter 5 act. And that's where we would basically put the upper limit, both in terms of where in the township, because there are parts of the township that are just too far away for, or they're not practical for wind or solar energy use. So we would basically say those areas are not viable, just like we say that certain areas are good for commercial and that's what we give some reasons why.
So for some good use of our time, maybe can we come up with a draft memo to the planner indicating what our expectations were? One, to be here, two, to provide, like you said in the notes. So alternative errors, requested survey performed to find out the township master plans. The other thing I talked about was if they could find out where, Sarah Mills referenced it, that there was a map on the transmission lines, the 96 corridor, or 90. So there was like one road, a Muskegon corridor report. And so that we would, so that way we'll be looking at our township, what makes sense. But it seems to make sense to just leave it all in industrial and keep it away from everyone, but if there's no infrastructure close to that. Then I'll just. I don't know if anybody else has a list of things that would be helpful. The other thing is, I think that they were gonna mess around with your chart and do something, or if I recall, I can't remember. I think I was recommending to keep it similar to yours.
Right. Yes.
But then there was a list of questions that we had that I don't think we've gotten answered yet. So we had everything listed under attorney questions. And then we had it listed under potential planner questions.
All those items are in the list.
Yeah.
Except for consolidation.
That should have been in the list too, that was right.
I apologize, I must have
I've got a
overlooked.
list if you want.
We've got a list. We've got a planning list.
So,
So I did, yeah, just a list and providing a list and just ask that we be ready. I mean,
one of the things, the one that has 4 columns on it with only one with proposed amendments on the left-hand side, that's what I just created that, and that's a decision matrix in which that's what we'll use to evaluate, discuss each item.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have this, but I think we asked the planner to put this together. So I just,
Although we'll be discussing things with him tomorrow.
are we gonna meet in 2 weeks again, or?
I was hoping to meet on the 2 weeks. 28th. Seems like it's a reasonable.
So that would be my recommendation, is to put something in writing and not call, or call if you want to, but put something in writing about our.
Okay. So should we move on to the discussion of the ordinance amendments?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's productive use of our time. Okay. I have 4 copies of the decision matrix before, so you can follow along.
Will it be on the website?
It's on the website. It should, I'm not sure if Kevin got it.
It's on there.
It's on there, yes. So, oh, Matt has an extra copy.
I'll take a copy.
And this is the exact same thing. for all of us.
Is there one?
Okay, what I did. The original document that I had previous meetings handed out had the ordinance listed and then the amendments, proposed amendments in the middle column and it was just didn't have enough, provide enough room to really discuss, evaluate the amendments. So a lot of times what is done is they have a decision matrix, which is what this is, and there's a column for, a rationale for, or reasons for having the amendment, and then there's a column for why the amendment is not a good idea, and then the final resulting discussion and decision about what to do with it, or final consensus. So, example on the first one, it's related to paragraph C of the ordinance, section C, application of the escrow account. Require cash escrow instead of a bond, and it should be evaluated every 2 years to ensure financial viability. In the ordinance, says this is an application escrow account. That means that when they submit an application, they have to set up an escrow account. And that escrow account will pay for any expenses that we incur, or the township incurs. It comes out of that escrow account. Currently, that is not in effect because this is not, we are doing this as part of the ordinance adoption amendment process. This is our responsibility. So anyway, so the ordinance says that an escrow account shall be deposited with the township along with the application for a special approval use for a large solar energy system. The monetary amount deposited in escrow with the township shall be the amount of $15,000 to cover all reasonable costs and expenses associated with the special approval use, review, and approval process, which costs shall include but are not limited to reasonable fees of the township, as well as costs for any reports or studies that are reasonably related to the zoning review process for the application. Such escrow amount shall be in addition to a filing or application fees established by resolution. At any point during the special approval use review process, the township may require that additional funds be placed into escrow with the township if the existing escrow amount deposit is deemed to be insufficient by the township. If the escrow account needs replenishing and the applicant refuses to do so within 30 days, the special approval process shall cease unless and until the applicant makes the required additional escrow deposit. Any other ordinances adopted by the township may also be complied with, must also be complied with by the applicant. The township shall provide a summary of all account activity to the applicant within a timely manner upon request. Any funds remaining within the escrow after approval of the special approval use shall be returned in a timely manner to the applicant. So, so the escrow account, so that would, once the filing, they make their application process, then hiring of the planner, his expenses, any experts that we contract, such as arborists or soil people, all those, anytime we spend money the developer would be on hook, we would have the money from the escrow. This particular paragraph is only for the approval process. Once the project is approved, this particular paragraph basically would be satisfied, cease, because this only talks about the approval process, not ongoing ongoing monies, which would fall under maintenance or the construction of the, the project. So therefore, this is item 2 is relative to as a cash escrow, and it would be this particular section would be less than 2 years in length, 6 months probably. This particular amendment would not apply to this area. It would apply this amendment to the actual construction, abandonment, of the project. And
Where are you at? Are you still talking about the escrow account? Or are you
Yes.
talking- Okay.
that's right. So, like I said, I would have to say that this particular amendment doesn't apply to section C, because that's all. Section C only is for the application process. Now, the maintenance, but we should have, obviously, we do have one.
So just to clarify, what you're saying is that because this is just the escrow account where they would put $15,000 in an account when they do the special use permit,
Mhm.
to basically say, here's $15,000 to, this has nothing to do with decommissioning, any of that. So, because if I recall, the testimony that was taken, that we heard, was that they were recommending a bond for the decommissioning, not a bond for the application. Correct. So having this as a recommended amendment in here in section C may not be applicable.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
And that I'm recommending that it, we consider it as possibly as part of maintenance, or construction, maintenance, and decommissioning sections. Right. Yes.
Can I bring up something else in this, or we just talking about it?
Well, we're talking about this escrow.
Yeah, it's part of part C.
Okay, sure.
It was just down at the end there, it says, can that be misinterpreted where any funds remaining within the escrow after approval? Does that sound like if we don't approve it, we have to give all the money back? Should that
Part
say?
that we haven't used. That's what we always do.
No, I understand that, but if we approve it, what if we deny it?
Well, any funds remaining returns
But it
to.
only says approval.
Maybe we should change that. Something like extra
Approval or
funds,
denial.
extra funds get returned at time of determination.
Excellent. Good catch. Because that, that's the possible loophole you could say.
I don't think I can order it.
Okay, instead of approval,
It says the very last sentence, any funds remaining within the escrow after approval of things, so can't you just say approval or disapproval or
6 won't happen.
Or after,
whatever.
But there's too many approvals in there too.
right. After, what did you say? After
I said determination.
determination. Okay, any funds remaining within the escrow after determination of the special use. After the special approval use shall be returned in a timely manner of the application, so. Yep.
Do you think you should raise the 15 to like 25 if we're making millions?
Well, if once the. if-
John, this isn't public hearing.
Okay,
Stick to the schedule, please.
Thank you. Just, yeah, 15 is only the beginning. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, good, so I'm going to recommend that this first one be considered as part of a construction maintenance amendment. So that's- Okay. Okay. Next one is comply. It was suggested that we comply with the NESC codes in effect at the time of approval by the township. Okay. Okay. Section D is compliance with the county building code and national electric safety code. Construction of large solar energy systems shall comply with the national electric safety code and the state construction code as shown by approval by the township as a condition of any special use under this section. So it was suggested that we add in there that at the time of, at codes in effect at the time of approval by the township. In other words, because the codes change on a regular basis. And so we want to make sure that we are well, no, that when the project is approved, that everybody knows which codes that they have to meet. In other words,
Most current version.
the current version.
Well, that's what we discussed 3 years ago, was that's why we picked those two codes.
Right.
Specifically, the National Electric Safety Code was because it's an evolving document. And that's why we wanted to reference it, so that way our ordinance evolved with the updated code. I mean, if we want to make people feel more comfortable that that's what's happening.
Well, the thing is that the code, like you said, the code is evolving. And so at the time of the project is constructed, that's the code that they should be building to, using.
John?
Yes.
I think it needs to be mentioned that when we do the approval, that we mention what code that we approved it under, since it's an evolving code.
Right.
So that if sometime we end up in court down the road, we can say, this is the spec that we charged them with. Not 10 years later, but this is the spec that we charged them with when we approved it.
Correct.
So you're basically saying, so it would, the ordinance would say county building code from 2023 and the NESC code from 2023.
You're right, but if we say at the time of the approval, that's whatever time, what,
So I know these codes, so
Right.
I don't know them inside and out, but they literally are evolving documents. That's what you do there. It's like the fire code or national safety. That was why we talked about it. So you don't actually have to identify it legally. And again, if we want to check with the attorney, that they would be, any developer would be obligated under the most recent code. So they couldn't, like, that was the point of getting it in there. Because we had talked about, remember, we talked about fences, we talked about a variety of different things a couple of years ago. And it was clear, I think there was an evolution, or there was a debate going on with the NESC code. And so that's what we said, is if we reference the code, our document evolves with that code.
Yeah, but the project doesn't. The project is fixed. That's why I'm saying we need to mention in the special approval what code we have approved them under.
Right.
Because we can't charge them with a code 10 years later that has changed.
Compliance with the county code and the National Electric Safety Code construction. So are you saying it would be construction and maintenance of the project?
No,
Need to
I'm
meet
just
these
saying
standards?
that when they're on the special approval, it just mentions what we approved and under what conditions.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah,
I
probably, I mean, I'm not,
Literally, I
I'm
think
not
we're saying-
trying to change that.
Yeah.
That is perfectly acceptable, you know, saying that whatever we approve, it does need to be with the most up-to-date code. I'm just saying that on the special approval for any project, we need to mention what code that we reference. So there's no question down the road.
and
I like the language there is fine with me.
that we have already.
Yeah, that we have already.
Okay. So I was just going, you know, like I said, you know, in effect at the time, the codes that are in effect at the time of the approval.
Right.
So,
Obviously, the most up to date.
so,
But which brings up another point as the code, after, because this is just construction, there's other things in the NESC code.
Right.
That as the project, it's 30 years, and those codes can be updated on a regular basis. So is there something to include to say that the projects, through the life of the project, it would maintain compliance with the NESC code?
that would be like saying that you need to make sure that your house over the next 50 years is in compliance with all.
It's not the house, I
I
have
know,
business.
I'm not, or the business or whatever, is in compliance with all building codes and fire codes as they evolve over the next 50 years.
Yeah, you actually have to do that. I mean, as a
No.
business, you have,
Okay,
yeah, as a business, your house, no, but like, I mean, the whole state is
Yeah,
going
but
through an entire fire.
I'm sure there's parts of the code that apply no matter what the time frame is.
Yes, that is why I referenced the federal code, so
Okay.
that
But I'm
this
sure
lovely
that
commission
it's
doesn't have
not
to figure it out.
where 50 years later, a project is forced to completely redo all their electrical. because
No,
of new
no,
codes.
I just said that to maintain
Yeah,
compliance, I mean, they're not, it's just a suggestion.
it's probably just fine.
John, can I just make a comment on this, if you don't mind?
I
think where this might come from.
John, it's
sorry,
it's
no,
a public,
You're willing to
is
ask
it
me
a public
question, I'm
hearing or
asking.
not?
That's, I'll leave it up to the board.
I agree.
Kevin, say something.
I'm trying to call it John.
Okay, wait, let me make a comment. This is a discussion for the board members. I would be more than happy to hear any kind of recommendations or comments after the meeting or at the public comment time, or, tomorrow or whatever, which will then, because this, we will review all of this again. You know, this is, we don't just, this is not gonna be a one-time discussion and then never discuss it. So if there's new information for next meeting, we will bring it up again. So Brian can tell me things later after the meeting or at the end, as well as you share.
That's what I.
Okay, so.
Can, to put parameters on this, can we maybe just, ask for the recommendation of the planner? How to address that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so then I will discuss some deals. Next one is under E, certified. All exterior service materials for substations and transmission, this is the amendment request. Equipment must be neutral in color. He says certified solar array components. Components of the solar array shall be approved by the Institute of IEE and then the SRCC and EIL or other similar certification organizations. If a similar certification organization is approved by the township, which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld. Okay, so this and also the next one where buildings need to blend in with neutral colors. So in terms of now, obviously the solar panels are black. That's for the buildings and any buildings or equipment. Neutral colors would be what? Brown, beige, gray.
No telephone green.
I guess maybe if that, maybe neutral is both.
Yeah, whatever they
Starts
call
getting
it.
into, but, like neutral, consistent,
Well, if we're asking their opinion, then I'm sure they have a range of suggested colors. You can just follow that.
for the IED.
Yeah.
I don't,
Color palette that they were-
For, and this is for like the equipment and stuff like that.
Every,
Well, then the question is, what is neutral?
I don't know, and I don't.
I
know where some of these
wrote that
suggestions
down
came
because I
from.
didn't know either.
I've
I mean,
never
maybe-
seen a
yeah, I don't
solar
remember
array
the
that look different
suggestions.
than any other.
Yeah, I don't
They're
remember
all the
this,
same.
but I think,
Galvanized steel.
I think what the public is trying to get at is that buildings, I'm assuming not buildings, I'm assuming solar panels or whatever.
No, they're substations.
Oh, I see, okay. So,
And usually those are great.
Yeah.
maybe just say something along the lines that the solar panels and buildings, they make an effort to, or an effort is made to blend with, like, not getting more complicated.
The trees.
The chameleon. Yeah, I don't know. That one I can't remember, but I do get the point that we don't want, that people feel as if they'll get something that's a little outrageous.
You don't want yellow yellow
Yeah,
inverter
or-
boxes
yeah,
and,
I,
This is one.
but on the other hand, they're gonna be screened, so who's gonna see?
yeah, but I think the screening, I mean, that's the whole point where it all blends in. Like, so if you have something that's, you know, there's an entire science behind like trees and blending with colors.
Right, you don't want yellow, inverter boxes.
Well, no, but if it's not a base color, by the way, I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I only read this on the store one time, but it was literally, there's base colors that you can get. And, or, what's the shinier gloss, thanks. So that's not gloss.
It's like a
Well, we
spectrum
could call for
across-
a matte finish. You know
Yes,
what that
that's
is?
actually really fun. Or eggshell.
A matte finish is not flat
You guys think we're
and
having
not
fun?
gloss.
I like it.
But like you said, what are neutral colors? And see now these decisions are, this information, most of the time, is something that is brought up during the site plan. And generally, it's not something that we
Right into the ordinance.
write into ordinance. It's
Just, this is one of the few things.
It's sort of
in
like-
this whole hodgepodge that I'm comfortable leaving up to the site plan.
Because,
You know, it's right up there with setbacks and desert.
I'm just trying to validate this poor soul that had this idea, that's all.
Oh, that was me.
Was it you?
You're fine. It's fine.
I didn't want to mention any names, but.
I'm good with it.
Like I said, this is usually something, if it's an issue, it's usually taken up, independent of the ordinance at the site plan review. It's generally, we don't dictate what colors, businesses have to,
But you can.
well, we can, right.
Why don't we just leave it at neutral and decide on it during the site plan review?
Yes,
Whoever is the developer for any project can suggest the colors. If we don't like it, we can suggest something else.
okay.
Just, we will emphasize what we are more or less looking for.
I think they heard about it tonight.
So that's those two. Next one is F for height. And the request is that panels should be 8 feet off the ground, maximum height of 12 feet. Okay, the ordinance section F is maximum height of a solar array, other collection device, components, or buildings of a large solar energy system, excluding substation electrical transmission equipment, shall not exceed 20 feet as measured from the natural grade at the base of improvements at any time or location on the property. Substation and electrical transmission equipment shall not exceed 100 feet.
So what's this? What's the 8 and 12 feet?
Well, 8 feet would be the,
Would that be the
the bottom-
lowest
the bottom-
point of the panel?
right, that's what I would take it
So
off.
8 feet would be the lowest point of the panel.
Correct.
Even.
So that basically would be almost ceiling high, at the bottom of the panel.
Right, which is not practical.
I would think not, especially since
I
if
would
you wanted to
imagine-
make the maximum height
Of
12 feet, that would only give you a 4-foot horizontal panel.
Exactly.
And that would pretty much kill the viability of the whole project.
Exactly. As well as
Why,
being-
well, do we have a reason?
They were, I would have to say that they were approximately, I think you might have some pictures.
You know, I don't know.
John, I'm looking at those pictures. from
If I had a
today, 'cause
picture
those were-
correctly of that.
From my recollection, those are single porches.
Look here was double panels.
Fixed.
Yeah, I don't, they weren't, you know, they were at an angle like this, so I don't know what,
This is
what a complete, you know, the maximum tallness of those would be. My pictures are kind of from a distance.
So I guess maybe can we ask if our intention is to maybe have other uses on the ground or to require the habitat or whatever we kind of talked about, that maybe the planner could do some evaluation of,
Well, for example,
what are some standards on this?
the Lapeer facility, which has been in effect for 5 years, has ground cover under the panels.
More or less, all.
I'd say it's basically
CRP type stuff.
Oh, CRP. Well, it's ground cover. It's not, it's fast.
What the viability of anything beyond ground cover and maybe some pollinator habitat would be with the amount of shade. I mean, you're not gonna grow anything solar intensive, it's gonna be perpetual shade.
Right.
Somebody else you mentioned, we're not putting much of, I don't anticipate much of it there.
No, I don't either. And I think what, like this, this was maybe 3 feet at most. That's what I was thinking. The thing is, do we, in terms of the lower, the minimum, do we really need anything at all?
Minimum clearance.
But why do we care? I mean, it's.
Well, I would think that
We
you would need it at least high enough, that you should be able to mow under it.
Correct.
I don't know what minimum height for that would be. We both saw these panels, they were around 3 feet, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
Is that enough to sweep underneath as much of the panel that the ground cover goes into?
Correct. It's something that we would have to.
Well, that's something that we even want to deal with.
Exactly, I mean,
Because it's really more of a problem for whoever owns the project. Weeds, if you have it real low to the ground, the weeds start growing up real high, it's gonna cut off a certain amount of the bottom of the panel.
well, what is it, okay, for the bottom, the minimum height, what is the ultimate goal of having a number there? And that is to make sure that, that whatever ground cover they have can be maintained
Yes,
properly.
right.
So that, we could easily say, we don't care what height you have. In the section where we talk about ground cover, that's where we say ground cover must be maintained
Right.
to a properly to a
Yeah.
aesthetic value.
No, I agree, that's a
And
better place to put it.
and then they will make that their height, whatever is
Right.
good for them, whether it's 6 inches or 4 feet, and as long as they maintain, the ground cover in a aesthetically pleasing manner.
Height maximum is in our best interest.
Correct. That's the other caveat.
Yeah, the question is, that's a good number.
Well, I would say that, like, from what I understand, they have double stacks and they have these types of panels. And I guess what we need to find out is, I understand 12 feet is not it's not an unreasonable number. But I think that why don't we find, I'll get some input, and we'll find, and we will follow up this discussion with some, after we get some actual input from people who are knowledgeable.
I don't know, is there a standard size for, more or less standard size for a panel?
I believe so.
Is there a standard size for a panel? Just shake your head. Okay,
They've increased over time, but.
we'll ask experts on.
But I agree that 20 feet is too tall.
I agree. Or seems too tall at this point.
What I am going to do is between now and the next meeting, I will consolidate input from anybody who wants to provide it into these spreadsheets, and we will talk about this again at our next meeting. So everybody will be able to provide their additional, their input. You know, so you will have a voice. Okay. Just like not for this time.
Do you already have our copies of our comments from that last meeting, Darrell? Can you
Yes.
resend it?
Yes, and they are on the way. Okay. Good. Next item. This is a fun one. Setbacks. Okay. Let me read the ordinance first, and then we'll get into the setbacks. G, a minimum setback distance of 50 feet from all property boundaries on the outside perimeter of the large solar energy system and existing public roads and railroad right of ways shall be required for all buildings and solar arrays, provided that a setback of 75 feet shall be required adjacent to any residential structure. So 50 feet to the property line, between the property lines and the solar arrays or buildings, or 75 feet if there's a residential house or whatever. Requested amendment. Minimum setback distance of 100 feet from all property boundaries on outside perimeter of the large solar energy system. The existing public roads and railroad right of ways shall be required for all buildings and solar arrays, provided that a setback of 100 feet be required for any participating residential structure, and 150 feet shall be required adjacent to any non-participating residential structure.
Who's participating?
Where that's their property. And non-participating is like a neighbor. Okay, just happens to be at wood next door or along the property. So this particular one is suggesting 100 feet. And then there's another suggestion, setbacks should be 300 or 500 feet from property lines, 100 feet from drains, and 500 feet from roads and occupied property lines. And then another person said, no more than 100 feet from any building, house, or road. There are some locations that may not require 100-foot setback, it can be 50 feet if agreed upon with the landowner. So I agree that now, okay, starting with the ordinance, 50 feet from property lines. If there's nothing, if the property line is just going between along field, I mean, around the boundaries, and there's no houses or along that property line, 50 feet, is 50 feet is sufficient, reasonable.
You mean like along the road?
Along a road. Or if,
Wait,
you know,
I'm sorry, what?
Okay.
You're saying 50 feet from the road or?
50 setback from the road right away. In other words, you have the road right away. And then you have the setback, this setback says it'll be 50 feet. And we're talking, right now we're talking about just along a vacant road, a dirt road, toll road.
What about neighbors across the street?
Yeah, I think that Apex is the one that you said 100. This is the third one is theirs. If you're looking at like, I think there's if you're looking at doing vegetation, fencing, and then mature trees or hoping for mature trees, I think you're gonna get into some road commission issues regarding like line of sight and things like that. So if they're on a corner and they're only 50 feet back and they've got mature trees plus a fence, I mean, the fence I'm sure won't be, blocking sight for mature trees, but it would seem as if 100 feet.
Well, we do have an ordinance that says that at intersections we have, you have
Lines of sight.
lines of sight.
Okay, well, beyond this, like if somebody's driveway or other types of things, I mean, but just in general, a consistency, if it's 100 feet consistent from the road, there's continuity, it makes it a little bit more appealing. I mean, 50 feet is really, I'm looking at far. I mean, like this.
Well, so now, in terms of setbacks, we have setbacks from, you can say, a property line along a road with no houses around. Then we have setbacks from somebody else's property, non-participating property, but a farm field. Where the solar project puts up to somebody else's farm field, how much of a setback should we require? And then you have setbacks to a participating house or property, and then you have setbacks to non-participating people. And I think that we need to spell out basically either all of those, or I agree with that we should be consistent.
Yes.
But those are the four situations that they're going to find themselves in. Along a road without any, like you said, there might be somebody across the road, but they're across the road, and then there's against a farm field, which could be that we could make both of those the same.
John, the issue with across the road is if they're non-participating,
Which I quite possibly would.
they would be less than 150 feet. If it's only a 50-foot line of the road. That's why I agree that it should be at least 100 feet in almost every case. That way, a house across the road, if it's 100 feet back, and there's a standard 66-foot road, they're going to be.
What's our setback from the right of way? Our front yard setback.
Well,
That
yeah,
adds to your.
the road is 66 feet wide.
Yeah, but don't our front setbacks go from the right of way?
Right. All I'm saying is that what I'd like to see is that even for a house just across the road, it's at least 150 feet. That would seem inconsistent otherwise.
With a 50-foot setback.
Front yard setback, so you got 50 plus 66. So now you're at.
110. See, and that's less than 150. So if you had 100-foot setback, then all of a sudden.
Okay, so when we're talking roads, are we talking setbacks for the solar panels? Are we talking setback like we do houses from the right of way or from the center of the road?
Well, the setbacks are from the road right away.
Okay. So you'd have 100, 66, 50.
Right. Plus, yes,
That's.
so, so 100 foot along roads. Now, what about just along farm fields? So non-participating farm field. I mean,
Well, again, there could be somebody across the, well.
Well,
I guess that,
No, I think we should make it consistent. Whatever we do, we should make it consistent. Because all of a sudden, somebody who owned a 1 acre plot in the middle of that farm field, has been sitting on it for 20 years, decides to build a house, and all of a sudden that house is closer than 150 feet if we go with 50. Whereas if we go with 100, even if the house is built, they'll still have 150 feet.
well, so I guess to add an alternative perspective. And because I really do struggle with this a little bit, but if we're trying to maximize our, minimize the amount of land utilization for solar panels in the township. Because I get the whole point of these huge setbacks and I get what people are trying to do. But if you have 3 farm fields next to each other and you do end up doing, you have one in the middle who's not participating, say, I have no idea what the situations are. But, and you do 100-foot setbacks on both of those fields on the opposite side of that farm, that individual farm in there, you're literally reducing whatever, I mean, if it's a 50-acre field, 100 feet, you could be reducing almost several acres of solar panels. So I get what folks are trying to do and make these as small as possible, but I think if we're trying to be good stewards, do all the things that we're saying we're trying to do in the master plan, the larger, I guess, the more that you can fit onto particular farm fields.
Because if you make the setbacks real big, means less solar panels on a particular parcel.
It means
Far-
more farms
So
all
therefore,
over,
so
all
therefore,
over the township being utilized.
right, because what they'll do is that they'll say, okay, now not all my solar panels can fit on this guy's farm. So now I have to lease another farm and put more solar, those additional solar panels there, because I couldn't put them on there because of the setbacks. So in other words,
And then if
all of a sudden,
we're
it's like
gonna
a-
look at an
it's like a-
ordinance that says only so much acreage for solar farms, things like that, it starts to get a little bit more complicated. Because then if you did, you'd have to do an ordinance that says, okay, the total amount of solar that we're gonna allow.
You almost need to have a map to see where everything's at. Could be long.
Yeah, but even without the map, like take the map out of it. Because if you look at industrial, I mean, you look at how these strips are with industrial, if they were capable of putting it industrial, they could. Or some of these other places, and we did these massive setbacks. And there's, I mean, you look at all of the industrial on Ann Arbor Road. That's up against farm fields that are up against the expressway. If those farm fields were participating and they went up right up to industrial or another field, and we limited it to 100 feet, those are all pretty narrow types of areas, but they tend to be areas that are much more ideal from a site perspective because they're not as, but no, not as, so that's the only thing I would like to consider.
We have different setbacks for different uses based on it.
Correct.
So, I mean, we could say in industrial setbacks for that. And setbacks. But to your point, Rebecca, I feel for the guy in John's scenario, he's got 5 acres that, and yeah, we don't, we want to maximize and not have to increase parcels, but this guy just wants to build a house. That's gonna be quite a nice thing. It's like, you better build your house now and get your setbacks where you're screwed.
We could reduce, on that point, we could reduce the setbacks in places where nobody cares, like railroads, right away.
Exactly.
And that would get back some of the land.
Back to this point of this 5 acres, so there's also community solar projects, and I don't know how frequently they're starting to get integrated into these larger projects. So here we are, the big debate is that there's only a few individuals that can benefit from this. But if we allow for community solar, where people are able to generate their own, so that person has those 5 acres.
Well, this only applies to large solar energy systems. Community solar
Agreed, but
systems, we don't, basically, we don't have anything that addresses.
Totally agree, but what I'm saying is that using the scenario that Bob came up with, that if that's 5, if they want to build a house, okay, that's one scenario. But if you want to possibly, there's other options. Possibly. I think I presented a new scenario so that we don't forget.
Well, I think that, like you said, 100 feet must be consistent along roads and other fields, non-participating, non-residential, fields. 100 feet is reasonable.
Wait, from non-residential fields, so it would be 100 feet from a non-residential field.
Actually, I prefer 50. That's, like you said. you
Yeah,
want to
but
be
then
consistent.
again, if all of a sudden the field gets converted to residential, all of a sudden you're crowding those people closer than the 100 feet.
That's,
We could consider a provision where it's like, look, I've got this 5 acres, I want to build my house on there. The ordinance now says 100 feet, but if it's important to you, then, and I feel that it's gonna devalue my 5 acres where I want to build my house, then that's fine. And can these people waive that and sell a reduction of the setback?
So I think if we make if a site plan comes forward,
Mhm.
we can make, because this is a living, breathing document, we can make adjustments to that.
yes,
Versus if we put it, not versus, but if we put it in the ordinance at 100 feet. And then if somebody comes forward, they always have the option of talking to the planning commission and saying, I have a major concern here because I own this property and
yes.
I know that's piecemealing, and I know that's creating headaches for a future date. But if our, that probably is gonna cause a lot of headaches.
No, I don't think it'll be that much of a headache because as part of these, this is my anticipation. And as part of the site plan process, we will be taking information and talking with every individual landowner who's adjacent to the project. In other words, in one manner, whether it's written or verbal, to make sure that, that we know that they know what's going on, especially the ones that are not participating. I'm sure they will already have been, educated and so forth. So, But, you know, in terms of our process, I want to make sure that everybody that is adjacent to the development, to the solar farm, you know, is fully aware of what is going on. Now, these are minimums. Now, if, for example, like what you were saying, somebody has some property that says, well, I want to build, you know, not this year, but in a couple of years, I want to build a house here, you know, that's when we can, could say, basically say, okay, for in this particular area, yeah, it's a farm field, but we want, you know, another 50 feet or another 100 feet away from, you know, setback in this particular area. As part of
That's, it depends on who's on the planning commission, whether they want to advocate for that person. And their property rights and values need to be more canonized. I mean, it's like, if you get a, I mean, and again, I don't know who's gonna be on the planning commission when, or the board when this comes in, but if we believe that, you know, there's certain things that need to be, you know, 5 acres, that needs to be protected. And we can say, I mean, like I say, I'll negotiate on neutral colors for solar panels at a site plan. But that doesn't, I don't feel comfortable leaving that up to negotiation or whoever kind of who the planning commission is in some future time.
Well, that's why I said we have minimums, and then we can always, you know, that site plan, we can ask for more.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, I think that the minimums need to protect.
Correct. And I agree with, you know, I have no problems with building with 100 feet on fields and roads. And now on participating property lines.
So how are we debating this? Because I feel like we're jumping around to a couple of them. So are we agree that, and then are we gonna vote on the individual things, or how do we kind of want to move forward? Because I feel like I still have some.
Okay, right now I'm trying to get our commentary.
Okay.
Okay, and comments and ideas. Then over the next 2 weeks, I will be inundated with comments and from interested people.
Okay.
You know, and which I will incorporate. And then at our next meeting, we will go over these again and say, hey, you know, this was a good idea, or this was, you know, and we'll also have time to follow ourselves.
So I guess to the point about adjacent property, to not have it at 100 feet. And I did not anticipate arguing this, by the way, because I think I came into it with the perspective, a different perspective. But I think the more that I think about our overall master plan, or the potential for a master plan, and the ways that we can, if we're gonna be maximizing property, you know, keeping this in the smallest amount of areas as possible, that we have smaller setbacks for property that is adjacent to non-participating or participating farm fields. And I'd say that only because of the fact to meet the, whatever we're gonna set as our
Yeah,
total
we
amount.
got 200 acre fields there, and there's nothing in between here, I can see having them closer together.
Yeah.
But if there's, that back over here's got 100 acres, don't wanna participate, then this is gonna have to, you know, but if there's two adjoining properties, I don't see the problem there, of being closer, a closer setback.
Wait,
But I think
if
we're,
there's two adjacent properties that are participating,
There won't be anything.
there won't be any setback between the property lines. They'll all be together.
And so it's only between the solar property and non-participating
Non-participating,
farm
right.
farm
Okay.
field.
yeah, so I don't think we agree. But my point is this for us to consider, and I maybe I would have to do the math, which is not my forte. But, what the difference would be on, you know, on how many acres that would be. So if you had 100-acre field, and I don't know how many 100-acre fields there even are, and you have a difference of 50 versus 100, and what that means for the township as a whole, then that means that is 10 more acres that they have to find at a different location. Now, to Bob's point, and I think to Matt's point, is that if it's a non-participating farm and they have some concerns, they have, you know, whatever, I have no idea if it's, what all the scenarios could possibly be, that when the site plan comes forward, that we could possibly address those individually. But I mean, some of those fields literally could be non-participants that live in Florida and don't give a rat's patootie. But if it's the 10 acres by my house or by one of our houses, somebody's gonna give a rat's.
So that's, right now, we're talking not near a house.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is that if you utilize that space
Right.
as much as possible versus having it go someplace else, which it could. So, and just leaving it as an option, I'm not creative enough, and I think I want to maybe discuss it with the planner. I mean, if everybody's opposed, then I lose, but, a creative way to say it in that, I gotta think about it more, but that's my intent is to.
The only way to do that is reduce the setbacks.
For particular things, but also having, you know, some, I've lost all verbiage tonight, some, you know, individual, site plan, assistance. Or customize, that's the word I was looking for, so customizing, each of those particular issues.
I guess the thing that I guess is sort of tying us up is here's the example of where somebody has some a field that all of a sudden now he wants to build a house, and we're gonna have solar panels instead of you know, closer, 50 feet closer that it could be. So, you know, if we had 50 foot versus 100 foot setback to them. Now, I guess the thing is, the one of the things, I guess, is that when we get the screening, you know, we're going to have screening around, you know, in front of houses. There's a house, there's going to be screen trees.
Right.
So I guess the thing is, if somebody builds that house that you're talking about, then we could have some verbiage in the site plan that basically requires the developer, if somebody builds a house on this adjacent field, you have to put in screening, even if it's 10 years down the road. There will be a fence along there because they're going to have the whole place fenced. But if it's just a, you know, farm
Right,
fields.
but I mean, if you're gonna do screening where nobody can see anything, okay? Then what's the difference between 50 and 100 feet? You can't see it anyway. I'm uncomfortable with 50 feet. I'm just thinking,
75 feet from a future house.
I'm just thinking we should be, we should have at least 100 feet minimum.
Well, why don't we have, penciled in as 100 feet minimum, you know, on fields and roads. And then, because we'll be talking about this again next week.
Oh, yeah, we talked it.
And so let's pencil 100 feet in. And then, like I said, I'll get input on this from everybody. Now, then there's setbacks to non-participating houses. And I think that should be, you know, 300 feet from a non-participating house. It's for your, you'll have your property line, you have a house, you have a property line, and then you'll have trees, because we'll be having screening, because we have a house there. And then, you know, then the solar arrays. And so I'm thinking about, you know, from a non-participating house, about 300 feet.
All the way around.
Are you talking about the property line or from the house?
From the house.
From the house.
John, what you were just saying was you're okay, you want 300 feet from an existing house, but you're okay with 75 feet from the future.
We should be as consistent as we can, so we don't run into problems down the road.
Problem is we can't take the future about who wants to go where.
That's more than 5 acres.
Well, I guess the question is that at the time of site plan. Something, I know it's a unfair requirement, is that we have to be notified that, okay, there's a potential in the house, but. Or is it, you know, 40 acre field, let's say 40 acres. Farm.
Are you saying to the guy that has 5 acres wants to build a house there, can we give him variance that is equal to the existing homes or whatever, put it in? Allow, if you want to build next to it that close, can we allow him to do that? And I got this 5 acres, I can't build here because these two are there, but can we give him a variance to do it, if that's what he wants to do?
Now, sure, because that would be something that's out of his control. If he's got reason that he, you know, wants to build someplace that, you know.
You're gonna have to go to the ZBA and hope they say yes.
I would say no.
Problems that are scattered all over instead of one big area.
So, I guess the thing is,
Why don't we think on it, move on?
Real quick, Zach, somebody brought up drains. I don't recall the exact process, so I apologize, but all of our ordinance have to be approved by the drain commission, or is it just
Our
particular
ordinances,
site
no.
plans?
Our
Or site
ordinances-
plans?
our ordinances do not have to be approved by the drainage commission.
Or site plans need to be-
Site plan has to have a drain commission approval. Yes. So the applicant, whoever comes in with a site plan has to have road and drain commission approval. That is, that is above and beyond our, that is a requirement of ours. I think it's their approval, but we do not control what the drain commission
Yeah.
says they have to do. Okay. The next item, we'll go for another 15 minutes and call it a night. Lot coverage. H. The ordinance reads, large solar energy system is exempt from maximum lot coverage limitations. Lot coverage in our ordinances is the amount of buildings, amount of area that buildings and paved areas can cover on a property, and it's typically 35%. And that usually applies mainly in industrial and commercial areas. And now, the thing is that solar arrays, I guess it all depends on how you look at it, you know. They have posts in the ground and, you know, drainage and water retention or whatever, absorption, is basically not affected because of, you know, ground is all open to absorption.
It's not like buildings or parking lots.
Exactly. So that's why typically solar, wind farms and solar farms are exempt from the lot coverage. Okay. Screening. There's a whole bunch of screening.
You read the first ordinance first on that.
On screening?
Yeah.
Yes. The large solar energy system shall be completely enclosed by a perimeter security fencing such as a chain link to restrict unauthorized access in accordance with federal guidelines. Such fencing shall be either 7 feet in height or at least 6 feet in height with a 1 foot extension arc consisting of a minimum 3 strands of barbed wire placed above the fencing and slanting outward as measured from the natural grade of the fencing perimeter. Electric fencing is not permitted. Okay. I want to stop right there because I think we are all, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's some cattle people here. Who like barbed wire. Anyway, I would like to just stop at 7 feet in height and take all the rest out. Yes, eliminate the 6 feet height barbed wire, you know.
Where did 7 feet come from?
7 feet is part of the federal regulations and guidelines, and that's where you don't. It says federal guidelines says you have 7 feet, you don't need barbed wire. Ironically, when we went down to Erie, you know, they had 4 foot fences. No, they had.
I just sent you a picture.
That's right. They had large. I mean, no. Lapeer had 4 foot fences. And that's because back when they did that 5 years ago, these guidelines weren't in effect. And so they put 4 foot fences.
These guidelines or regulations?
National Electric Code.
National.
So it's code.
Code, yeah. So, in fact, we should probably say that. You know, reference that code. So, okay. Need to reference federal code fencing. delete reference to 6-foot park. Let's not even bother with having that option.
So we would just say such so we have minimum 7 feet in height. Period.
Call it.
Next time, if you want to make a recommendation. Okay. And then electric fencing is not permitted. A perimeter of the large solar energy system shall also be screened and buffered by installed evergreen or native vegetative plantings whenever existing natural vegetation does not otherwise reasonably obscure the large solar energy system from adjacent residential structures, subject to the following requirements. And then we have 4 requirements. 1, large energy systems shall be exempt from greenbelt landscape material and screening requirements of 1601. That's because we want to spell everything out in this section. 2, the evergreen or native vegetative buffer shall be composed of native or evergreen trees that at planting shall be a minimum of 4 feet in height and shrubs 2 feet in height. The evergreen trees shall be spaced no more than 15 feet apart on center from the central trunk of one plant to the central trunk of the next plant. Native trees shall be placed no more than 30 feet apart on center, and shrubs shall be placed no more than 7 feet apart on center. All unhealthy, 60% dead or greater, and dead material shall be replaced by the applicant within 1 year or the next appropriate planting period, whichever occurs first. 3, all plant materials shall be installed between March 15th and November 15th. If the applicant is unable to plant during the installation period, the applicant will provide the township with a letter of credit, security, or corporate guarantee for an amount equal to 1.5 times the cost of any planting deficiencies that the township shall hold until the next planting season. After all plantings have occurred, the township shall return the financial guarantee. And 4, failure to install or continuously maintain the required vegetative buffer shall constitute a violation of this ordinance, and any special approval use may be subject to revocation. Okay, so let's see. So, minimum setback distance of 100 feet from all property boundaries on large, that's setback, subset. A large solar energy system shall be completely enclosed by perimeter fencing such as deer fencing to restrict unauthorized access in accordance with federal guidelines. Such fencing shall be 7 feet in height. Use of razor or barbed wire, electrified fences, spikes, or similar security material shall be prohibited. The perimeter of large solar energy systems shall also be screened and buffered by installed evergreens or native vegetative plantings whenever existing natural vegetation does not otherwise reasonably obscure the large energy system from adjacent residential structures, subject to the discretion of the planning commission. So that was paragraph that was that the planners agreed with. Basically says, is in agreement with our no burn wire. Okay.
Planner came up with that top paragraph for that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got a
Yes.
different, I printed mine at work, so I might not be.
Yeah, that was the first one on the screen. Planner, provided that verbiage.
The third party arborist. I'm sorry, I completely lost track.
Two paragraphs, it's above the big paragraph above.
This is,
Oh, okay, sorry.
I just read that, this paragraph.
No.
Sorry, page 2. That's where the paragraph starts. So, I think, so that basically talks about the fencing. I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that. Then on page 3, we have, I have a suggestion, a third party arborist must inspect the trees and shrubs on site to verify health of the plants prior to planting and after all trees and shrubs are planted. Test the soil prior to planting trees and shrubs to determine successful growth, modify soils or import material as necessary to guarantee successful plant and shrubs.
On one hand, that sounds like a good idea. But on the other hand, whoever's gonna be paying for and planning these things, if they fail, it's gonna cost them to have to do it all over again. So we make them incur cost, tell them how to do their job. Or you wait, trust that they'll do their job right. If it fails, it makes it work.
Well, I sort of like the idea of having a third party.
Oh, no, not that, yeah, I'm talking about soil. I'm sorry.
Exactly, right. And there, I would have to say that the arborist would work with the developer to say, tell them what to do to make sure that it's going to be a success.
Yeah, I mean, you can pick out some pretty trees, but if your pH or macro, if the things aren't right, they're not gonna be successful.
Right. And the ironic thing is, if they die, they got to do it all over again. So it's not as if, once they do it and everybody walks away, that.
But third party, I like that, because between the third party arborist and then they say, look, I made these recommendations and they did them. Okay, I feel a lot better about that.
Right.
If they say, hey, I made these recommendations and then they hired some crazy landscape crew and they just planted them and then they died. How I respond or how I feel this township should respond and the screening, which I think we also is important, is my attitude towards that's going to determine how well we work. Probably.
Talk about, the Mineral County Conservation District a little bit.
Yes, I mean, the arborist could be them, could be somebody.
Do they have somebody?
I don't know.
Staff that, might be able to.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
That type of.
They have the sales rep.
yeah, I agree that, that should be at the discretion of the arborist about soil testing and because, the developer is not gonna want to spend money multiple times. They're gonna want to plant these things and be done with it. So, otherwise they'll be spending money, because we've already got in here that they got to replace some of the stuff dies. Yeah. Okay. So, public comment time. Any public comment? Like I said, I will be more than happy to take emails. You know, you guys have seen what we're doing here, and you know, send me emails with your comments and recommendations, and I will incorporate, you know, the information. And we'll, like I said, we'll be, you know, briefly going over these again. You know, obviously some a little more detailed than others. And next time and time after that, and and so forth. So yes, sir.
I was under the same understanding you guys were about 33-foot setbacks from the center of the road. And when they surveyed Gary, his property down by me, I was told by the survey crew that is a 150-foot setback off the Ann Arbor Road. Something you guys might want to know.
Oh, off of Ann Arbor Road, yes.
Class A road.
Actually, it's 132 feet.
On the right.
Yeah, it's
so right away.
on
Okay.
a major thoroughfare, it can be big.
Well, because the only reason I'm saying that is I had asked them and they said because the telephone poles on that side are set right at 150 feet.
Yeah, well, the utilities don't always put
I
their
understand what you're saying.
things in the right of way.
The other thing I have is the 300 feet setbacks from residents. Apex is already gonna allow that. We need to go a little bit more than that. They talked to my neighbors, good neighbor act. That's the only way they're gonna get him to bite is if they give him 300 feet. So you need to go a little bit better than that.
Any other comments? Yes,
Yeah, first of all, this isn't about Apex, it's a solar ordinance, so you gotta leave it out of it. And these are suggestions.
I'll use that.
The neutral colors was suggestions. You know, you guys are picking on every little word. And it's annoying because, yes, it is, because they've spent, before you was around, they spent 2 years on this. And they came up with an ordinance. They know what the ordinance is. John, if you read your minutes from last week, asked you all to come prepared to review this stuff. You shouldn't have to read the current ordinance now. You should all know it because he asked you to come prepared. Why are you nitpicking over one little word? You know, and you need to all go back and listen, watch the Zoom from last meeting when John Enos told you. First of all, the master plan, you don't understand why that's even being talked about, but you guys talked about coming up with a wordage. Okay, that's fine, setting it aside. The ordinance is what needs to be done. But he even recommended you didn't even need to have a moratorium extended if you listen to him, but you got to listen to him. He said all this can be done in a site plan. I agree with you that it's better to have it in writing than allow it for a site plan. But all the little nitpicking, show me one place where there's a 5-acre parcel that somebody's gonna build. That's ridiculous. They can deal with it in a site plan, or if they're approached, that's what that whole process is about. You know, you're not gonna cover everybody, every single thing. But you're you know, anyway, it just, go back and listen to what he actually said. And we spent 25 minutes in public hearing talking before we ever got the meeting started today. We got it, and please watch it again, because he said last month or last meeting, it's gotta get run the way it needs to be run, or you're not gonna get productive. And that's what most of those comments were about. And you keep taking suggestions, you've got all the suggestions. Some of these are ridiculous suggestions. They were put in there to kill the deal. That's what they were put in there for. And they know it. And so you gotta look past some of that and be realistic in and go back and watch on Facebook about what they set up here. Because that answers a lot. It's unfortunate that everybody didn't get to go, because that answered a lot of questions. Go ahead.
Thank you.
With
Yes, Sharon.
Lapeer, I think the property that you guys were at, the city owned it, and it was residential. It was a farm, then it turned into residential, and then the city owns it.
They do.
That is totally different than what is going to be out here. If you look at it, Kevin, there was no residential
There's
around it.
Yes, there is. Look at
I
it.
did not see it. Why didn't you guys point it out?
Drive up there.
Okay.
Or is it, it's 2 hours away, drive up
Okay,
there.
you got 2 minutes, my 2 minutes. So if he says that you guys are nitpicking because you're trying to protect this whole community, not just 9 people,
5 people.
5 people, then I suggest maybe we should just go ahead and just place it 5 to 7 acres, and then we wouldn't have this nitpicking.
Yes, fine.
Okay, my comment is, these meetings, one after another, is consistently dwelling upon the people that are in this room that are against it. You're all worried about protecting them, making them happy. You know what? You have taxpayers and people in this township that have been in this township and their families for many years that are landowners and are wanting this to go through, okay? Furthermore, applications and agreements have been signed. Really? Yes, really. How about that? Legally, you are responsible. If you want the township to face litigation, then you'll continue down this path.
I think they're doing a great job.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Guys spent 19 months on the ordinance. Got several people in. I've read the ordinance, my attorney read the ordinance. Why I signed it. With Apex. Now, as for Lapeer, that one part of the solar field, there's a mobile home park. There's another part where there is a subdivision and trails. It's not too far up the road, you can drive there and look. And one of them was a barn because the barn is still there.
Any other comments? Yes, Brian.
Hey, John, I just had a couple of comments related to the setback discussion. I think Rebecca brought up a couple of good points about, property line setbacks and how that impacts how much acreage can be used. And so I was just running some numbers on my phone. If someone had a 40-acre parcel, and let's say you were applying that 100-foot setback to, to their side yard, to their rear yard, because the neighbor in the back was not participating, and to the road right away, you're taking 11 to 12 acres of that 40-acre parcel that could not be utilized for the project. So that's a concern we have with extending a property line setback or road setback to 100 feet from 50 feet. Is you're just wasting additional acreage that would then have to be made up for elsewhere. I do agree that consistency is important. When you look at the rest of the zoning ordinance, when you look at kind of front yard setbacks or even side yard setbacks that Matt mentioned, rear yard setbacks, you're really looking at 50, 30, 10, 25 feet, depending on the different land use. So I think that's why you see 50 feet is a pretty common, straight, consistent number. And then you do a 50 feet, not from the center of the road, but from the road right of way. And for additional protection for someone who lives across the street, you do have the possibility of doing a more generous house setback that then applies across the road right of way. So you don't end up with something that's only 100 feet from a house, if someone's house is really close to the road right of way from that. So just wanted to mention that. And then the only other item I had up here is just screening. Just avoiding being too prescriptive with screening because it does allow you to evaluate the actual screening that the developer brings forward. It's customized to that particular site. You can take into account existing vegetation, topography, and take into account all those different things for what would actually screen the project. And that brings it back around to the kind of the site plan review process. The ordinance is a guidebook. It's meant to sort of give you a blanket set of standards that's a minimum to apply. But each project that comes before you is going to be different. Just how every time someone comes with a barn or a planned unit development or a gas station or whatever, there are unique characteristics to a particular site that really do need to be taken into consideration. The point about someone's got 5 acres and they want to turn it into a house is a fair point. You have to balance that future possibility against kind of the property rights of existing landowners today.
and where do you meet that balance? And that's where you can look at a particular site when it's actually evaluated in an application process and say, okay, here's a special, unique aspect of this site that we should consider. This person that wants to build a house, this other abutting use, this topography, this intersection, what have you. So that's just my point of encouragement. We did put in comments on all the ordinance suggestions before. I'll read through it again because I know there's been some additional suggestions that have been tossed out. But just to make sure that you have our comments for why some of the suggestions are good, and we agree with some of the suggestions on good additions for the ordinance, and why we think some of them are unnecessary or arbitrary. So I'll make sure that we send those to the.
Ryan, were there multiple versions of what you sent us?
No, I've only sent the one.
Okay, I got it, I just want to make sure. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, so there's probably some new suggestions that are not reflected in there, because they keep coming in from time to time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We're adjourned. June 28th is our next meeting. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.
I think I'm not.
Didn't